After a smooth-talking grifter wiped out her savings, my tearful younger sister came to me. I took her in, fought her battles, hired a lawyer, and even gave her my year-end bonus, anything to help her recover. But my boyfriend, Arthur, grew increasingly annoyed. You handle everything for her, and she doesn't even thank you. Leighton, are you her mother? If she's so clueless, she deserved to be scammed. That's when I threw a glass at him. I stared him down and said, "She's my flesh and blood. Our mom died when she was 8. I raised her. So treat her with grace. If not for her, then for me." Later, I was sent out of state for work. I called daily, watching her rebuild her life through the screen. Everything seemed to be returning to normal, until 2 months later, when I came home a day early. I pushed open my bedroom door to find my sister in my favorite silk nightgown, leaning against Arthur's chest. He was feeding her the sweetest part of a watermelon, his face full of sickening tenderness. The silence in the bedroom was instantly suffocating. Amanda was the first to react. She bolted upright, springing away from Arthur's chest like she had been burned. Her lips were visibly trembling. "Leighton, what are you doing home? Your flight wasn't supposed to land until Friday." The spoon in Arthur's hand froze in midair. A drop of red watermelon juice fell, staining my pristine silk bedsheets. The color drained from his face. He didn't say a single word. I stood frozen in the doorway. My fingers were wrapped so tightly around the handle of my suitcase that my nails were biting into my palms. The air conditioning was humming quietly, yet a cold sweat had broken out across my spine. Amanda forced a smile that looked infinitely worse than a crying fit. "You must be exhausted, Leighton. Here, let me take your bags." She stumbled toward me barefoot in a frantic rush. Her knee clipped the sharp edge of the bed frame. She hissed in pain, and her eyes instantly welled up with fresh, pathetic tears. Arthur's brow furrowed immediately. He reached out and caught her by the waist to steady her. "Careful. You're always rushing into things." His tone carried a hint of reprimand, but the way his hands lingered on her was so incredibly, disgustingly tender. I stared at his hand resting on her arm. My stomach completely dropped out. "How long has this been going on?" My voice came out much calmer than I expected. Amanda went rigid. She instinctively looked up at Arthur, seeking permission or protection. He gently pulled her behind him, finally locking eyes with me. "Leave her out of this. This is on me." Arthur was a man of very few words. He was always stoic, never one to wear his heart on his sleeve. When I agreed to date him 3 years ago, it was exactly because of that steady, grounded nature. He wasn't like the slick-talking players who left you constantly second-guessing your worth. When our mom passed away, I was 12 and Amanda was 8. Our dad couldn't handle the grief. He drowned himself in cheap liquor, skipped shifts, and eventually got fired. 2 years later, his liver gave out, and he left us too. From that moment on, I never leaned on another living soul. Arthur was the first person who ever made me feel like being taken care of didn't have to be a debt. He made me feel like it was okay to take off my armor and just be soft. Yet here he was, standing right in front of me, shielding my little sister with his body and looking at me with eyes colder than winter ice. He was looking at me like I was the enemy. Amanda peeked out from behind his broad shoulders. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Leighton, it's really not what you think. We just... Got your story straight yet?" I cut her off, my voice dripping with ice. "Go ahead. If you're going to explain, then spell it out. What exactly is your relationship? When did it start? And just how far have you gone?" Amanda flinched. The tears spilled over immediately. She rubbed her eyes like a toddler, letting out these soft, pitiful sobs. I let out a dry, hollow laugh. I didn't even know if I was laughing at her audacity or my own utter stupidity. Arthur tightened his grip on her hand. His voice was incredibly soft when he spoke to her. "It's okay. Let me handle this. Put some slippers on. The hardwood is cold." Then he looked up at me. "Leighton, let's take this outside." "Arthur, this is my house." My voice finally started to shake. "You're telling me to leave?" He fell silent for a few heavy seconds. He glanced back at Amanda. She was shrinking into herself, her toes curling against the floorboards like a frightened rabbit. When Arthur spoke again, his tone was placating, laced with a pleading edge. "She had a panic attack last night and didn't fall asleep until 4 in the morning. Just let her get some rest. Please." A dull, agonizing ache bloomed in my chest. It felt like someone had shoved a fistful of cotton down my throat. I couldn't swallow. I couldn't breathe. In the 3 years we had been together, I had never seen Arthur beg anyone for anything. He was a proud man. He never backed down in corporate negotiations, and he never apologized when he knew he was right. But right now, he was throwing away all his pride to beg me on behalf of the sister who stole him. Arthur picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. He turned to Amanda and gave her one last gentle instruction. Go to sleep. Don't wait up for me. There's milk in the fridge. Make sure you heat it up before you drink it. I turned on my heel and walked out the front door. If I stayed in that room for one more second, I was going to throw up, or worse, I was going to let them see me cry. Arthur followed me out, keeping exactly half a step behind me the entire way down. His face was buried in the shadows, his expression unreadable. When we reached the underground parking garage, he opened the passenger door of his car for me. I didn't move an inch. Right here is fine. His hand paused on the door handle. He closed it quietly, fished a pack of Marlboros from his pocket, and lit one. The fluorescent lights overhead were flickering, casting a sickly yellow glow over the concrete. The cherry of his cigarette flared bright red in the dimness. I made the first move. He took a long drag. His voice was incredibly raspy. Don't blame her for this. Amanda is your little sister. You practically raised her, so you know exactly how she is. She's terrified of her own shadow. She doesn't know how to survive without someone holding her hand. After she got completely wiped out by that last loser, I watched her fall apart. I just couldn't turn a blind eye. He flicked his ashes onto the concrete. He still wouldn't look at me. But you're different. Leighton, you are the most capable, fiercely independent woman I have ever met. Even without me, you're going to be completely fine. I stared at him. I pressed my fingernails so hard into my palms that the skin nearly broke. So that's it? Because I'm independent, I deserve to be stabbed in the back by the two people I trusted most. It was the most absurd, twisted logic I had ever heard in my life. When Amanda first moved into my guest room, Arthur couldn't even stand hearing her name. If he caught her wandering into the kitchen in her pajamas, his face would twist in disgust. He used to drag me into our bedroom and whisper shout about how she had zero boundaries and how my apartment wasn't a halfway house for helpless adults. 2 months ago, right before my business trip, I literally begged him to keep an eye on her while I was gone. He stood at the airport drop-off, hands stuffed in his pockets, looking absolutely miserable. She's your sister, Leighton. She is not my responsibility. That's exactly what he told me. It had only been 8 weeks. And now, this man wearing the face of the person I loved was standing in front of me, speaking words that made him sound like a total stranger. Arthur shoved the cigarette box back into his pocket. His voice was heavy with complicated guilt. I know I screwed you over. All that money you wired to Amanda to bail her out? I'll pay you back every last cent. And the condo is yours. I won't ever set foot in it again. He paused, taking a shallow breath. I just have one request. Amanda really, truly looks up to you. Don't let my mistake destroy your relationship with your sister. I felt entirely hollow. I was so exhausted by the sheer audacity of it all that I didn't even have the energy to scream. If you know that sleeping with my sister is a mistake, then why the hell did you do it? His jaw ticked. A long time passed before he finally answered. Leighton, there are some things you just can't control. It happened. I will do everything in my power to make it up to you. But if you blow this up and make a scene, the person who gets hurt the most is Amanda. You don't want to see your little sister dragged through the mud by the rumor mill, right? I'll pack her things and take her to my place tomorrow morning. I booked you a suite at the Marriott for tonight. Just give them your name at the front desk. He turned and walked toward the elevators, leaving me completely alone in the freezing garage. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from him with the hotel address. At the very end of the message, he had typed, "I'm sorry." I stared at those 2 words until my vision blurred. Upstairs, a single warm light was glowing from the window of my condo. I had changed that exact light bulb with Arthur the day before I left for my trip. Now, that light was shining on someone else. There were millions of lights in this sprawling city, but not a single one was burning for me anymore. I finally crouched down right there on the concrete, burying my face in my knees as my shoulders shook violently. I never went to the hotel he booked. Instead, I drove my car onto the interstate and just kept driving in circles until the sun came up. The next morning, I drove out to the historic district. Tucked away on a quiet street corner was a quaint floral boutique. It was owned by Harper, my old college roommate. When Amanda's ex-husband threw her out on the street, I was the one who paid the retainer for her divorce lawyer. While the legal battle dragged on, I begged Harper to give Amanda a low-stress job at the shop just to get her out of the house. I paid Amanda's salary out of my own pocket, strictly forbidding Harper from ever telling her the truth. I still remember Harper laughing at me over the phone. Leighton, why do you treat this girl better than you treat yourself? Amanda was standing on the porch of the boutique. She was wearing a canvas apron, crouching on the ground as she repotted a fern. When she saw me walking up the steps, the metal trowel slipped from her grip and clattered loudly against the pavement. Leighton, how did you know I was working today? I didn't answer. I just pushed past her and walked inside. Amanda scrambled to her feet and scurried in after me. She frantically grabbed a wooden chair, wiping the seat down with a sleeve of her shirt in a desperate, fawning gesture. Have a seat, please. Let me get you some water. She spun around too fast and crashed into a display stand. A watering can tipped over, spilling a puddle across the floorboards and soaking her sneakers. She stared down at her wet shoes, then looked back up at me, wringing her hands like a grade schooler caught stealing candy. Looking at her, my mind drifted back to when we were kids. She was only 8 when we lost Mom. She was so terrified of the dark that she had to wrap her arms around my neck just to fall asleep. Even as she grew older, she was always attached to my hip. She was like a little shadow I could never shake off. Leighton. Her shaky voice pulled me back to the present. I know you hate me right now, but I swear I didn't plan this. I don't even know how things spiraled like this. She tilted her head to look at me. Her eyes were already completely bloodshot. You've been good to me my whole life. I know that. But you were always so busy. You were always fixing my problems, throwing money at the issue, but you never actually had the time to just sit and listen to me. Arthur is different. He actually asks me what I had for lunch. He remembers the tiny, stupid details of stories I tell him. He picks up the phone at 3 a.m. when I have a nightmare. You always told me you wanted someone to treat me right. Now I finally have that someone. Why can't you just be happy for me? Listening to her play the victim while demanding my blessing made me want to laugh until I threw up. I had poured 16 years of my life into raising this girl, and she turned out to be an utterly ungrateful snake. Amanda, since the day you were born, name one thing you asked for that I didn't give you. Your college tuition, your rent, your groceries, your divorce lawyer, the credit cards you maxed out, the thousands of dollars that grifter stole from you. Have you ever actually sat down and calculated how much money and blood I have bled out for you over the years? And after all of that, my reward is the sister I raised stealing the man I was going to marry. She dropped her gaze. Her lips quivered as heavy tears slipped down her cheeks, splashing against the wooden floor. I was 12 years old doing homework for rich kids just to buy our groceries. At 15, I was bussing tables at a greasy diner. A vat of frying oil splashed on my arm and left scars I still have today. When I was 20, I worked so many overtime shifts that my stomach started bleeding. When the ambulance took me away, there wasn't a single person sitting next to me in the back of that truck. I shoved my sleeve up past my elbow, exposing the faded, jagged white scars running up my forearm. You don't know any of this. Because I intentionally hid the ugly parts of survival from you, so you could have a normal childhood. She stared at the scarred tissue. The last bit of color drained out of her face. For 16 years, I carved out half my life and fed it to you. And how do you repay me? You parade around in my clothes, you sleep in my bed, and you climb into my boyfriend's lap. She collapsed onto the floorboards in a pathetic heap, her apron smudging against the dirt as she sobbed uncontrollably. I crouched down so I was eye level with her. The ice in my chest had completely frozen over. Every warm memory I ever had of her was now rotting in my mind. Amanda, everything you ever wanted, if it was in my power to give, I gave it to you. But the things I do not offer, you do not get to steal. You never had the right. Arthur came sprinting through the door at that exact moment. He took one look at Amanda crumpled on the floor, shivering and sobbing, and his face morphed into pure rage. He crossed the room in 3 massive strides, yanked her off the ground, and shoved her firmly behind his back. I told you, if you have a problem, you come to me. He glanced back at the trembling girl behind him, then turned his furious gaze back on me. The anger in his eyes was visceral. You know she has a bad heart. Could you not have just talked this out like an adult? Did you really have to push her to the edge of an attack? I looked at him and couldn't help but let out a cold, sharp laugh. You are getting awfully good at playing the knight in shining armor, Arthur. I recall a time when she first moved in, and you couldn't even stand the sound of her breathing. Now you're her patron saint. Arthur puffed out his chest, looking completely self-righteous. You want to keep score? Fine. You practically raised her. Calculate every dime you spent on her, every favor you pulled. Give me a number. I will pay you back every single cent, plus interest. Will that satisfy you?" I stared at the stranger standing in front of me. Unbidden, a memory flashed through my mind from 3 years ago, back when he was trying to win me over. It was the dead of winter. A blizzard had rolled in. He stood outside my office building for 3 hours waiting for me to finish a late shift, keeping a bag of roasted chestnuts warm inside his coat, so I would have something hot to eat. He hadn't texted me because he didn't want to stress me out while I was working. He just waited in the freezing wind until his face was raw. Back then, I remember thinking this man is so undeniably good. Every horrible thing I have ever endured was just the universe testing me so I could save up enough luck to find him. And now, this same man was standing across from me, trying to boil down our entire history. 3 years of devotion. Countless late-night conversations. The safety of his arms. Every promise we made about the future. Everything I thought was permanently etched into my soul. He was trying to reduce all of it into a cold, hard number on a bank transfer. A clean break. Paid in full. "Stop it," Amanda suddenly shrieked, stepping out from behind his back. Her face was drenched in tears, her chest heaving violently as she struggled to catch her breath. Arthur immediately reached out to support her waist, but she slapped his hand away. She lifted her chin and glared at me. Her eyes were burning with an ugly, defiant resentment. "Leighton, I know I did you dirty. I know I owe you a debt I can never repay. But stop acting like you are some holy martyr. You raised me for 16 years. Every meal, every coat, every dollar. I remember all of it. But do you want to know a secret? Growing up, the person I hated most in this entire world was you. You handled everything perfectly. You were so flawlessly capable that every time I looked at you, I felt like a piece of trash. You made me feel like I couldn't survive 24 hours without you holding my hand. I could never stand tall in your shadow. That's why I was so desperate to escape you. The only reason I married that absolute loser was because he promised to take me away to a different city. Yeah, he turned out to be a scammer too. But this time is different. I am never listening to you again." She grabbed Arthur's hand, weaving her fingers tightly through his. "I have finally found my true love. Even if you curse my name for the rest of your life, I am never letting go. You already have everything else in the world. So, what if you let me have this one man?" Hearing her spout such twisted, entitled garbage felt like taking a bullet straight to the chest. I slowly took 2 steps back. I watched Arthur firmly squeeze her hand in solidarity. Then I smiled. A quiet, terrifyingly calm smile. "All right. Amanda, as of today, your debt is cleared. From this moment on, whether you sink or swim, whether you live or die, it is none of my business." I turned around, pushed open the glass door of the boutique, and walked out into the street. I didn't look back once. When our dad died, I was 15. To keep a roof over our heads and food in her stomach, I went to high school during the day and scrubbed dishes in the diner at night. That winter, the exhaustion finally caught up with me. I collapsed with a severe, burning fever. Little Amanda had panicked. She piled every single blanket in the apartment on top of me, then ran out into the snowstorm by herself to buy medicine. She was so scared the paper pharmacy bag would get wet that she tucked it inside her winter coat. She ended up slipping on the black ice and falling over and over again. Her knees were scraped raw. The wounds got frostbitten and severely infected. Her fever spiked, and by the time we got her to the ER, the infection had attacked her heart muscle. The cardiologist told us she had permanent myocardial damage. She could never do strenuous exercise again, and severe emotional stress could trigger a fatal attack. Because of that night, I spent my entire life feeling like I owed her. I was ready to lay down my life to make sure she was protected. And now, she was holding my boyfriend's hand, looking me dead in the eyes, and telling me I was the person she hated most in the world. One was the sister I bled for. The other was the man I was supposed to marry. The 2 people I valued above anything else on earth had conspired to slip a knife right between my ribs. Why should I be the only one bleeding? I closed my eyes, pulled my phone from my pocket, and scrolled down to a specific contact. The very next afternoon, Arthur came storming up to my front door, pounding on it until it rattled in the frame. "Leighton, you sent a formal demand letter to Amanda's attorney. Have you lost your damn mind?" Opening that letter triggered her heart. She was hyperventilating until 3 in the morning. I leaned comfortably against the doorframe, crossing my arms. A debt is a debt. It's the law of the real world. You know exactly how much of my money she burned through. Arthur's jaw clenched so hard a muscle feathered in his cheek. He took a ragged breath to steady himself. Leighton, I don't have that kind of liquid cash right now. Tell your lawyer to drop the suit, and we will handle this privately. I laughed out loud. It was the funniest thing I had heard all week. You don't have it? Arthur, just yesterday you were screaming in a flower shop about how you were going to pay me back with interest. He glared at me, his eyes rimmed with red. Leighton, she is your own flesh and blood. I offered him a lazy smile. We sever ties. I couldn't care less if she drops dead tomorrow. $80,000. Principal and interest. I want every single penny, and I am giving you exactly 3 months to wire it. Arthur's face turned a violent shade of purple. He bared his teeth and delivered a low threat. The major client your firm is trying to lock down right now? The VP of